companies, governments, individuals are all struggling to keep up with this fast pace of technological change. As digital technology is already into our lives, but this trend is going to become even more prominent. This is also evidenced by the number of patents filed in the European Union. More than 5,000 applications for inventions relating to autonomous objects were filed in the European Patent Office in 2016 alone. And in the past 3 years, the rate of growth for the fourth industrial revolution patent applications was at a staggering 54%. This far outpaces the growth of other patent applications in the last 3 years, which is at just 8%. In this environment, of course, not everyone needs to be a data expert, but everyone needs to be data literate. Otherwise, people, activities, whole sectors and whole countries will just be left behind. Sweden, thankfully, is not in that position. It's one of the countries leading the way when it comes to digitalization. It has successfully implemented a national digital strategy. These efforts have given it a more than 10-year advantage over other countries. Germany, for example, is according to some reports, when it comes to adopting digital technologies, behind Sweden. In the Digital Economy and Society Index, DESI, for 2018, Sweden now ranks second in Europe. Overall progress is in line with the EU average, as well as the countries in the high-performance cluster. People don't just talk about digitalization in Sweden, they actually live it and make it happen. Greece, on the other hand, is lagging, unfortunately, and we rank in the penultimate position in the same index. In 2 weeks, on March 19, at the 5th Business Forum Greece-Sweden, the theme will be digitalization and how this is the future for Greece. So we invite you all to participate in that, and as you leave this room after this session, you can pick up an agenda on your way out. So what can Greece learn? With us, we have the ambassador of Sweden to Greece, Ambassador Sammelin. Thank you very much for being here. And I have a few questions for you, and we would like to see what lessons can be learned from Greece by observing this best example. So what are the key factors in the Swedish digital strategy that have made the difference and resulted in another success story for Sweden?
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be here. Well, in the drive to digitize, Sweden took bold initiatives and invested, and we are still reaping the rewards. And if I may go back a bit, it's a history of collaboration between public and private sector, academia, trade unions, and civil society. Part of this history is also Ericsson and the national telecom provider, and of liberalizing the telecom market early on, and also in a reform that we call the Home PC initiative. And if I may, I would like to share go into depth a bit on these reforms. And the first one is the need to invest in and liberalize the telecom sector. If I may go back, in 1885, Stockholm had the highest amount of telephones globally, and it was the result of a fierce competition that bred a successful local producer. And to grow the telecom network throughout the country, the government took lead, buying up private local networks and making it a national affair. And this, of course, enabled Ericsson to thrive as an important supplier of technology and go overseas. But the continuous collaboration between public and private sector has been key, and also of liberalizing telecoms early on. and the state operator was privatized in the 90s, and this enabled other players to enter the scene and to push competition and innovation forward. The second element that has proved to be very important is the home PC reform. In 1998, the government made it possible for ordinary people to claim the purchase of a personal computer against tax. And the cost for this reform for the state was 370 million euros. But the scheme was also supported by business and trade unions. And in just 4 years, about 1 million Swedes got their first computer, and this is about 10% of the population. And this initiative was a major driver to improve the digital literacy, and one factor that now explains our ICT transformation. And the third element here is the importance of infrastructure and broadband. And the Swedish starting point has always been that it's a market-driven expansion that should be complemented by public efforts. And in the years 2009 to 2018, the private sector invested almost 10 billion euros in fixed and mobile broadband. And the government stepped in only for non-commercially attractive regions. And in the period now, 2014-2020, the government has allocated 600 million euros in a rural program. So now what we see is that over 99.99% of all households and enterprises have access to broadband through 4G. And more than 60% of Swedes have access to super fast fiber broadband capable of 100 megabytes per second. And next year, the government wants to rise this figure to 90%.
So this is a very good achievement. But what happens next? Are you implementing another digital strategy for the future? And if so, what are the main elements of that?
Yes, in 2017, the government launched a digital strategy where they focus in the digital area on competence, safety, innovation, leadership, and infrastructure. And here again, basis for progress is collaboration among and contribution from key actors. Now, during 3 years, the government is investing 15 million euros to implement the strategy and has already taken over 200 initiatives. Then we have, of course, also in 2017, we focused on the strategy for the educational sector. But what we have already done so far is created a flexible system to increase the competence, not only in basic education and universities, but what is also extremely important is lifelong learning. And it is essential to establish close collaboration between academia, industry, and public sector, because the public sector must know what the future challenges and demands are in order to furnish the students with the appropriate skills so that they are able to be successful and participate on the labor market.
Ambassador, women in Sweden are a big part of this technological revolution. And in fact, they rank again second in the relative index. Why is that? Is it because in general, Sweden is a more gender equitable society? Or is it again a result of a specific strategy? And if that's true, what are those elements?
Well, low rates of women's participation in the ICT sectors remain in many countries, and including in my own. Gender equality is just not about equality and rights. It's about democracy and economic empowerment. And the way we see it, that no nation in the 21st century is going to lead the world in anything if they use only half of their human potential for ideas, innovation, and growth.
How true.
But we have no specific policy to target gender equality in the digital economy. It's based on the overall policy, and it's an active and collective effort of all stakeholders on the market, in the private sector and in the public, to push this forward. We are conscious that increased attention is needed to equality and diversity within sectors developing new digital solutions. Because when a society turns more digital, a specific segment of the economy is then automatically going to become more powerful and influential. And with increased power follows increased responsibility. Hence, a sustainable digitization must contribute to developing an equal society. And we are very aware about this, and we are trying to address the gender equality in the digital economy horizontally.
Okay. Now, Sweden is known also for its startup ecosystem. Now, at the same time, Sweden is also a very high tax rate country. So there must be some other incentives to promote this startup trend. Can you comment on that, please?
Well, the digitization is clearly delivering real values. Let me just say that 4% of Sweden's working population in ICT provide nearly half of the country's nation's growth. And we have, as you said, many global success stories despite our small population.
Population the same as Greece.
As Greece, yes. And but Sweden is second only to Silicon Valley when it comes to the number of unicorns produced per capita. And according to data from the OECD, Sweden has 20 startups per 1,000 employees. And you can compare this to just 5 in the US. And the development towards the digital economy is not only driven by developments of new and disruptive technology. An equally important part of the progress is new models for business, welfare services and governance to solve the challenges that we are facing. And the taxes has not had a major impact here. According to our experience, there are 7 elements which are crucial to promote a digital ecosystem. The first one is high quality and flexible regulatory system, access to competence, to have a good infrastructure and access to capital, innovative use of existing technology, and what I've also already mentioned and that I would like to stress and that I think is very important for Greece is the collaboration, the teamwork and the trust among all the stakeholders. And lastly, the welfare state, which provides adequate security for people so that they dare to take risks.
Okay. I like the part about the collaboration of the different stakeholders. Ambassador, this is really admirable, and we'll have the chance to discuss in depth during the 5th Business Forum on the 19th of March. However, I would like to close this session on unless you want another comment to make, on a more optimistic note. We have to be optimistic about Greece. It's not all black. The new generation is adopting very fast to the new technologies, and they are already implementing at a growing pace. And also, we talk a lot about the skill of the working force in Greece and the education level, so that is also an important factor. There are digital skills pools locally in the universities, and on account of that, new business activities are springing up all the time. They rely on the existing skills, and they form part of the value addition in the global value chain. Again, the issue of the need for a more conductive and business-friendly environment in Greece arises, so we'll have to tackle that once more, even in the context of the digital transformation. I want to thank you very much for sharing your experience with us today, and thank you all for listening. Thank you very much.